Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to our May 7th Hendersonville Regional Planning Commission meeting. And we're glad that you're here tonight. And just before we get started, once again, I'd like to just take a moment and thank all of our commissioners and all of our staff. Last month we had a rather long meeting, and it was long, but we got a lot of good work done. And I appreciate everybody hanging in there. Hopefully tonight will not be that, but I want to thank you, and I wanted to take that opportunity and do that. It looks like everybody is here. We're going to ask if we could all stand, and Commissioner Lee, would you open us up in prayer tonight?
Would you bow with me, please? Gracious Father, we thank you for the beauty of this day that you've given us. Lord, how the sunshine warms our hearts and warms our spirit. We pray now, Lord, that all we do and say will be in accordance with your will and will glorify you. Father, we pray your blessings upon the city of Hendersonville, upon our planning department, and upon those who come to partner with us. These things we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Thank you. We have everybody's in place tonight, except for Alderman Woodcock, it looks like. No, he's here. Yeah. Bryant McCormick's not. Bryant Millsap's not here. Bryant Millsap's not here. Okay, so we need to make a note of that.
And Barry Hardwick.
Barry Hardwick. Okay. So we're missing two.
I think Barry will be here.
Barry's going to be here? Okay. All right, we have one public hearing, a request by Baywood Point Partnership to approve revised final development plan for Ivy Point at Patmore Place to expand the approved primary exterior building materials to include hardy fiber cement siding. This property is located on the east side of Anderson Lane. On the north and south sides of Flintshire Lane is identified as Sumner County Property Tax Map 138, parcel 027.00, and there are no applicants signed up for that hearing, so we'll declare that one closed. Is there any request for information and assistance? Okay, hearing none. Additions to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. We have the minutes from April the 2nd. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve by Ms. Silkwood, second by Alderman Woodcock. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, it's passed. Consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda. Would entertain a motion move to group.
Motion to approve and group.
Okay, motion to move and approve and group by Ms. Silkwood, second by Ms. Stringfellow. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Going on to preliminary and final development plans, we start off with Ivy Point, the revision of the building materials. They are agreeing to all staff comments. Who's handling this one, Mr. Freed?
Sydney Simpson can give a brief
Okay.
overview of that.
Sydney, and if the applicants would want to go ahead and come on up, go ahead.
So basically, there was a home in Ivy Point. Ivy Point, as the public hearing said, is off Anderson Lane, just a little north of Autumn Creek, and it has 32 homes in it. And there was a home that was built not quite as proposed, and so that led to the desire of the developers to seek adding hardy as an approved material. They are requesting that 15% of the 32 homes be made of hardy, and so that would be approximately 4 homes that they're requesting to ask for consideration for that FDP revision.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Is the applicant here? Somebody from the applicant? Would you step to the podium for a second and introduce yourself? Go ahead.
My name is Frank Batson. I'm one of the builder developers. When we proposed the CC&Rs on this development, we also were doing a development in Baywood, and actually the attorney, when he did these, he got them correct in Baywood and missed the fiber cement with the ones in Ivy Point. So What we're actually proposing is just one house, and then the Trent Halcomb, who is here to my left, I think you're proposing two. The existing house that is lot, that one, and then one more, so.
So there would be a total of 4 homes, am I correct, or is it 5?
4.
Four. Okay. So let me just going off of the letter that was sent in. It says no more than 15% of the homes shall have a hardy fiber cement siding as predominant exterior material. Are you proposing with this that it would be all of that, or are you going to, would you continue to build those 4 homes as prescribed in the architectural standards of the submittal?
Well, the ones that would have the hardy, naturally, the foundations would be bricked, but it would be predominantly hardy, the rest of the homes.
Okay.
Because the ones that are built in there, which are, we're probably 50% built, are all brick except the one home that has partial hardy on it.
Somebody, maybe one of the staff, could you tell us what the standards are right now for that particular subdivision as approved, Ms. Simpson?
Sure. Those currently as approved, the FDP was approved in 2006, and the FDP stated that the homes had to be brick or stone with some accents of other materials for dormer soffits, that kind of thing. So currently, they call for basically 100% brick on all sides.
Okay. Okay, any questions by any of other commissioners?
How did that one house get built with that hardy board in there?
Ask the question.
I'm sorry?
Ask the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did that one house that has hardy board on it now, that's what they're going off of, right?
Mr. Free, you want to answer
So how
that?
did that get built?
Yeah, let me explain what happened is that we had an applicant that had wanted to build a home that had was mostly hardy board, and in looking at that, we had determined we couldn't permit a house that was predominantly hardy board because of the restriction that it had to be all mostly brick. And so in looking at that, then it was brought to our attention that there was one already under construction that was hardy. And so when we got to looking at our records, we'd found that the zoning application for the one that's under construction now actually was, let me see, just a second. This is the house as it is out there now, but this was the house that was submitted for the zoning permit. And so that was the difference of what that was. And then I think what happened was, I'm not for sure exactly what happened with what was submitted and what changed for what was built. I think maybe there was some confusion from the builder side that they expressed to us they didn't realize that it couldn't be hardy. They thought that was in there, and then we got that all cleared up. And then then the only way to move forward was either to take all of the majority of hardy off of this and re-brick it, or come back and get an adjustment made to the exterior materials for this one. But then the other builder was wanting to build, that one? Is it this one, wanted to build this one?
Yes.
That's why they're requesting 4 houses, so that the one that's under construction would be okay. That same builder could build another one, and then this builder could build one more, and then that would leave one more that could be built that had mostly hardy on it, but with a stone or brick foundation. And so that's kind of what happened. But what we do in planning before somebody gets a building permit to build, then we get the elevations, especially if it's a planned development that was approved, and we go through that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure, okay, what was the percent of brick, or was there anything specific about garages? We make sure that that's okay before we let it move forward to the codes department for the full building permit. And
So
that's.
So this basically was an oversight.
Pretty much.
Yes. Yes.
So because it was an oversight, then we are being asked to allow more.
Yes,
Pretty
it wasn't the oversight of the planning department.
Yeah.
But it was oversight of what was submitted for the zoning permit and what was actually changed later and built. I don't, in all of our communication with the builder and developers, I don't think there's anything where anybody was trying to do something, it just kind of occurred. But in looking at it, it's 32 homes. So we have 32 homes. It's not unreasonable, I wish this hadn't happened the way that it did, but it wouldn't be unreasonable to request 4 of 32 homes to be hardy board within the development. That wouldn't necessarily, be something odd to ask for. It'd been better to get that at the beginning when everything back in 2006 was squared away. But that's probably, my guess would be, part of the confusion from the development side of it is that was in 2006. And then just recently, the development actually started with the streets were built and then homes have started to be built. And so that's.
If I may comment,
Yeah.
that's a pre-sale, and as far as the impact on the neighborhood, there's no distinction in price between hardy and brick. I know that's hard to believe, but so it's a case of where it does nothing to the value of the other homes that are already built.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Longmire, anything else?
No, that,
Thank you. Mr. Woodcock?
Thank you. Keith, why are these materials prohibited to begin with?
I think it's something kind of, especially back probably in 2006, it's maybe a little bit less now, but it depends on the quality of the development. We have Durham Farms, it's a mix of hardy board and brick, and there's certain percentages with that. And we've approved other planned developments that weren't 100% brick. They were maybe 66% brick and then 33%, a majority of hardy. So there's nothing that really, that it's got to be all brick. It's something I think historically, especially back in 2006, 2008, 2009, 10, wanting 100% brick neighborhoods is probably what was a focus
It was
at
a
that particular
preference
time.
thing.
Preference, but not necessarily, it would just been a preference is all that it would have been.
Follow up on that, we had major discussions back then with some of the developments coming up. Developers wanting to develop in Hardy actually had reps come from various manufacturing plants. And as far as the material and the integrity of the material, it's solid. It's really good.
But the perception in 2006 was that brick was a higher quality product.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's
Looks and
yeah.
durability.
So
That's true.
as far as the material side, I think you're okay, but it was a preferential thing.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understood you correctly, Keith. You're saying planning feels this is a fair compromise? You don't feel like we're giving up too much or
No,
moving to a lower quality product?
No, I think it is, given the number of homes that we're talking about and this is not an average neighborhood. This is more, for lack of a better word, this is certainly more of a higher income neighborhood, more of a higher level development. And the homes, other than these are similar plans that have been built in the front, but now just talking about building it with hardy. So not necessarily a downgrade in the overall square footage or like you said, the cost of it. But if it was something where we were talking about half or 25%, I think I might feel a little bit differently given the flow and the mix of the homes there.
I would say also that on one side of the coin, 15%, 4 homes does not sound like a bunch, which it does not, but the other side, you're going to have 4 homes out of 32, where the rest of them are predominantly brick and stone. You've got 4 that are not. And you can look at it from both sides, is what I'm trying to say, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, Mr. Betson, I think you indicated that this particular home was a pre-sale home. So obviously, the person that wanted this particular home wanted a Hardy and wanted that look that was there. So it's not a spec house. It's like a custom pre-sold house.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We use an architect out of Atlanta. Frank Betts is one of the best architects in the South.
Right.
And coming out of the Atlanta market, it's amazing how predominant now the Hardy has become.
Yes.
And so this lady wanted to buy that, and that's what it was.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, based upon the discussion that we had, if it is appropriate, I would move that we approve the amendment for Ivy Point at Patmore Place as requested.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner Lee. We do have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Alderman Woodcock. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? One no. Mr. Altizer. It's passed. Thank you. All right, moving on to Bullseye at Hendersonville. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay, we're over here. Who's handling this one, Mr. Free?
Mr. Timothy Whitten.
Mr. Whitten. Oh,
Chairman, is this project with Ivy Point going to be considered a minor or major amendment to move on to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen?
it's a minor.
Okay, just want to
minor.
make sure. Thank you.
Okay, this is the now vacant O'Charlie's restaurant site. The applicants are proposing to tear down the existing building and in its place put two quick service restaurants, the first of which would be a Chipotle. So they're proposing to build that first restaurant along with the entire site, and then leave a spot for the second restaurant, just pad it out. So that second occupant is yet to be determined. They have agreed with all staff comments.
Okay. Would the applicant like to say anything?
Not particularly, but my name is David Bailey. This is Will Craig, my engineer. We agreed with all of the staff comments. We're just here to answer any questions that you have.
I think the only question I would have, and it's not a major one, is just, we know the Chipotle is going in. Any sense of when the second tenant might go in there?
So I would love for it to be sooner than later.
Sure.
It really just depends. We've got a few people in the mix. Of course, we're trying to fill a gap. The area has a lot of restaurants, retail already, but there are a few holes, and we're looking to plug those.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Ms. McCormick. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Stringfellow. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One no from Alderman Woodcock.
Mr. Chairman, they did advise the applicant that the Planning Commission normally eats the first meal at all the new restaurants. No.
Without saying.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one we have is 103 and 104 Jessica Lauren Court site plan. Owner MC2 Group. Is somebody here from that group? Let me step up here for a second. And Mr. Whitten?
Thank you. This is a 2.6 acre site located in the Avondale Industrial Park. The proposal is for two buildings, both of them which would be for warehousing. The Avondale Industrial Park used to be zoned industrial, but was rezoned to heavy commercial in 2015. Most of the buildings in that area predate even the city's building design standards. So you have a lot of buildings out there that have a lot of metal, a lot of overhead doors facing the streets, not much glazing, not much in the way of vertical or horizontal wall articulation. But with the rezoning to heavy commercial, that then brings in commercial building design standards, which does not allow the use of metal siding, does require significant wall articulation, does not allow overhead doors to face the street, requires a good bit of glazing on the fronts. Given the context of their surroundings, basically what the applicants have proposed are two buildings that would basically meet our industrial building design standards, and they are requesting waivers from the commercial building design standards. So those can be broken down into four basic areas. The first being the building materials. They will have brick on the fronts. The rest of the sides and the rears will be metal. The buildings do not have wall articulation, and they don't have recesses and projections of the walls. On the building fronts, they have provided some sort of cosmetic simulated articulation with some brick banding at the top. And then they do have overhead doors that you might say that they face the street. You might not. Kind of depends on how you look at it. And then they do not have significant glazing on the fronts. Our standards require 70%. They fall well short of that. What they've tried to do is kind of more or less meet or match what the CrossFit next door did, which has brick on the front, some glazing on the front, and then the sides and the rears are metal. So they are requesting those four waivers, and they have agreed to all staff comments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitten.
With Dewey Engineering. This is Rob Cushman, the owner of the property, and we have revised the plans per the initial comments and agree with all staff comments, final staff comments.
Okay, so just to kind of be clear, let's go through this one more time as to what you're willing to do here on the building materials. Mr. Whitten, would you go over this one more time as to what they're willing to do?
Okay, so they'll be bricking the fronts. The fronts of the buildings will be all brick.
Okay.
Save for the openings, the overhead doors and the other doors. They will have some brick banding within that on those fronts. They'll have proposing metal on the sides and the rears, which they need a waiver for that. They are not proposing any wall articulation, so they'll need a waiver for that. They don't have any recesses or projections. Because the roof, the roof line there on one of those buildings does kind of project out a little bit. You might consider that to be some articulation. They are proposing overhead doors facing the street, and they'll need a waiver for the amount of glazing that they're providing, which is just a minimal amount.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's before you, commissioners. Basically, what we have here is you have an area where there has been ordinance change, as in this architectural standard change because of the classification of the area, but most of the buildings that are there do not meet those standards. And so the latest one that we have approved probably was CrossFit, and you see what's going on there. So this applicant's come in with requesting similar kind of waivers because of the area. So what's your pleasure? What would you guys like to do? Any questions? Any comments?
Is Is this going to be investment property or is it owner-occupied property?
Sure. The smaller of the two buildings is just shy of 5,000 square feet. It'll be owner occupied. The other building's approximately 13,000, and it'll be an investment property.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to, I guess what we would do is, it would be a motion to, the motion would be to go ahead and grant the waivers and approve the project, or if we don't have that motion, that doesn't carry, then we would just actually not approve it, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to move, or to accept all four of the waivers.
Okay, we have a motion to accept all the waivers. Do we have a second? Mr. Hardwick seconds. Do we have any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It carries.
Thank you.
The next plan that we have is the USPI clinic site plan. Who's handling this one? Mr. Witten, and if the applicants are here, would like to kind of get close to the microphone in a minute. Mr. Witten.
Okay, USPI, this site is located on Hendersonville Road next to the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance, which is now under construction, which itself is next to the Rocky McElhaney Law Office. The applicants have agreed to all staff comments. There is one, though, that I'll need to point out, and they kind of need to get, well, technically, they do need to get a waiver related to it. That's staff comment number 13, which says rooftop units must be screened by way of the building parapet walls, not roof-mounted screen walls. So the city's building design standards and the Indian Lake Village Development Guide are specific in their requirement that rooftop units, such as HVAC units, be screened from the street. And they're also specific in saying that they must be screened by way of, if you have a flat top building, you have to use the building parapet walls. In other words, the screening has to be integral to the building architecture. And our standards specifically say you cannot accomplish that screening by way of rooftop mounted screen walls, which that would be just a simple wall that's mounted within or on top of the building roof. It says you can't do that. This is a little bit of a different situation. It is I believe, essentially a surgery center. They'll have, I think, 4 operation rooms. They do have to have some quite large equipment on top of the building to service those operating rooms. The equipment is pretty large, I think 8 or 9 feet tall, whereas usually your HVAC unit might be 4 or 5 feet. What we're used to seeing as far as screening, but most people do raise their parapet walls an extra 2, 3, maybe 4 feet to screen those units. That's typically done. Here, though, you've got a single-story building. To raise the parapet walls, that they're already 4 feet high, to raise them an additional 4 feet for a total of 8, maybe 9 feet. Basically, the architect is looking at having to design a 2-story building at that point, which would, that would incur significant redesign, I'm sure, significant cost. They would like to do a rooftop screen wall. And, in talking with staff, we think that there may be a way to do that and design it in such a way that it looks like it is an occupiable, basically a penthouse unit, such that it does not look like it's trying to hide something. It looks like part of the building.
Yeah.
That design hasn't been done yet. Basically, Clint, if I can put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, what they're asking is to get a waiver to allow a rooftop mounted screen wall, but it would be subject to them working with staff to come up with a design that staff would be happy with. And if we can't come to that point, then they would come back to y'all to get that resolved.
A design and the materials to be used.
Correct.
So, grant the waiver for the rooftop units for the screening to take place on the rooftop, and then leave it up to staff to come up with.
Right, subject to working with staff.
Right. Okay. Any comments by the applicant?
No, I think Timothy summarized it well. I'm Clint Cassidy, the architect, and the building is already 20 feet tall around the perimeter, and we've got lots of spandrel glass above the 9-foot and 10-foot ceilings in the building to give the vertical height to the glass. So we've already kind of made the building as tall as we can on a one-story.
From, help me with the topography here, from 386, would you be able to see from that road the unit itself, or would you just see the screening?
Excuse me. I think that we have not looked at that specifically. I believe as you travel west down 386, I think the grade gets taller there. I think that at some point you may be able to, you would see more of that screen wall than you would if you were kind of towards the eastern side of it. And it's the same thing on the Saundersville Road side. If you were standing at the future TOA lot, it's about 11 feet. The finished floor elevation of that building is about 11 feet taller or above the finished floor elevation of this building. So if you're standing on that site, you'll get a much fuller visibility of that rooftop screen wall than you would if you're standing on the east side of it, which I believe is lower.
So the only thing that we would do there is, in the design of this, let's take that into account. If it's going to look like part of the construction
Right.
anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
It would need to
Take
be all four sides
Right.
taken into account.
The equipment is inboard to the building in the center part of the building. So what we're proposing is instead of doing a full perimeter, you want to come inboard and wrap the equipment with glass and ephes and the materials that we're using on the building. So it might look like a penthouse or second floor, but inboard, kind of wedding cake step in.
Sure. Okay.
Yes.
Let's see, Mr. Altizer, I think you were in the queue.
Sorry about that, I accidentally hit it.
Okay, Mr. Woodcock.
Thank you. This question may be for Keith or Timothy. Did TOA have the same issue with any of their equipment? They
No,
require a waiver?
Their parapet walls will be tall enough to screen those units. That the building walls will be tall enough to screen those units, so they do not need an extra rooftop screen wall.
And there's no fear that what we're going to allow here may look dramatically different from the other new buildings that are going up as we speak?
That's going to be up to the architect to figure that out. Again, I don't have a good idea of how to accomplish that.
But you're comfortable that a compromise can be made between staff and the developer to make it not look so, I don't know, different, for lack of a better term?
Mr. Free.
Yeah, I feel comfortable that we can work something out with the development, to work that out on the penthouse and making that look right. And to be honest with you, if we can't work it out, it'll just have to come back to here. But I feel like we can probably work that out, but it is certainly challenging to do that. And I think from the units that are on top of this building, it's different than the units that are on TOA, because this is actually, if I understand it right, this is a full-blown surgery center, and so the equipment's different than the equipment that's on TOA. So typically, a 4-foot parapet wall or a 5-foot parapet wall will hide all the mechanical equipment. In this specific instance, you've just got 7, 8 foot of equipment that's on top of there. Is that correct, Clint?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. This is basically a miniature hospital, same-day surgery. So these are full-blown operating rooms. So we have massive amounts of air to keep the room sterile and very large equipment.
Okay, I see nobody in the queue. Do we have a motion to grant the waiver as stated before and approve the project? So moved by Mr. Woodcock. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Altizer. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's carried.
I'm gonna get your nose for the record.
Huh?
I'm gonna get your nose for the record.
Do we have any no's on that? No, we don't have any no's. Okay. Music City Industrial Park, this will be the next one. Mr. Whitten?
This site is located on Innovation Way, which is off of New Shackle Island Road. Y'all may recall, y'all approved a ServPro building across the street not too long ago. All this area is zoned industrial. They're subject to the industrial building design standards. The development is 5 buildings for a combined 144,000 square feet, so it's a substantial project. The applicants did work with staff quite a bit to rearrange things, and they reoriented one of the buildings to stretch across the front of the site, which allowed them more flexibility as to the use of metal on the buildings that are internal to the site. They are doing compliant materials on that front building facing the street, and also even on the buildings, there's 4 buildings at the back, the sides that face a parking court. Those will not just be metal, there'll be a mixture of metal and brick and EVIS. They have agreed to all staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Whitten. Is anybody from the applicant here would like to say anything before we?
My name is Jay Fulmer with Fulmer Engineering. I'm here to answer any questions,
Okay.
but I don't have anything to
Thank you.
say ahead of time.
Okay, is there any questions by any of the commissioners? They agreeing to all, Mr. Lee?
Just move that we approve.
Move to approve by Mr. Lee, second by Mr. Woodcock. And all in favor, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered, carried unanimously. Okay, we move on to staff-approved projects that are approved. Durham Farms, Exxon Canopy Addition, Harbor Hills Section 2, Indian Lake Village Section 5, Resub Lot 24 Final Plat, Millstone Phase 11 Section 1 Final Plat, Millstone Phase 11 Section 2 Final Plat, Nanny Berry Elementary Outdoor Pavilion Site Plan, Old Beaverwood Recording Studio Parking Lot Renovation Site Plan, and then the projects that are pending are the Hendersonville Business Park Section 3 Phase 2 Lot 7 Consolidation, Indian Lake Village Phase 8 Section A Lot 41, and Saundersville Industrial Park Section 7 Resub Lot 70. It's a ghost story final plat. And then we have Saundersville Industrial Park Section 8 Lots 40 and 41 Consolidation Final Plat, Waterfront 83 Waterfront Creekwood exterior renovation. And I would need action on that. Those are projects that are pending. And no other. Any planning director comments?
Yeah, yes, Chairman, thank you. I've got just a couple. One thing, probably, and we'll let you know here in the next couple of weeks so you can plan on that. But in June, we'll probably have a work session on the zoning ordinance changes. The staff has been working on those over the last several months, and I think we're about prepared to have that come before the Planning Commission in a work session, kind of work through some of those things and get some of those changes moving forward. One thing that I didn't do it at the last meeting, because I think y'all would have thrown me out of here if I did that at the end, but a couple months ago, I attended Burris Elementary School, and they had a project. The fifth graders at Burris Elementary School in their STEM class, they had a project where they built cities, and I went and judged those, and then selected the winner of the project. But you can see, and it's interesting because these cities that they have, there's actually a little robot that they have programmed that goes in between the buildings as well. But a lot of these were very well thought out as far as the way they've laid out their cities, and very, very smart kids. and there had to be at least 3 or 4 future city planners in there. But they did a great job. You can see the detail. And one of the things they did, it was a city planning project, but they were doing volumes so all the buildings were actually to scale, and they had to calculate the volumes of the buildings. And, a lot of them really laid things out real well. They did a lot with the walkability, locating schools near housing and those types of things. And they had a lot of really interesting questions as well. And I think the winners are coming up. Yeah, actually, those two girls right there, they won, and they did a great job. And I think there were maybe 50 different cities, and then that was the folks that were in the top 4 behind the first place, and that was it. And we're gonna work with them next year, and we're gonna involve more of our staff, and we're gonna do some really neat things to promote planning with our young folks. And but they've really got a great vision for what they think a city should be. And so it was really a good opportunity to talk with them. And that's about all that I have. One thing I might just give you an update. There's still a lot of things going on. We have a lot of things that end up here on the agenda, but there's a whole lot of things that are building up that you all will eventually see. So on any given week, me and the staff are meeting with 2 or 3 different potential significant developments, so there's a lot of continued and interest in our great city of Hendersonville, and it continues, and it has not waned whatsoever. And it's not just in residential interest. We continue to have interest in residential development, but as you can see tonight, we have interest in very creative and interesting industrial development, commercial development, office development, medical office buildings. I think we're going to see more of those things that are going to be coming, as well as more commercial and service enterprises and restaurants. As you saw at Chipotle tonight, we're going to see more of those types of things. What a great place to be in the city of Hendersonville, and what a great time to be here. It's very exciting what the future holds for us. But it's very important, as we've discussed here, is that as we review these different things, and the growth is coming, but to make sure that we're managing that in a very thoughtful way, that we're taking the best of what growth offers and trying to mitigate some of the worst of what the side effects of that can be. And I just want to express to the chair and the rest of the planning commissioners, what a diligent job I have seen you do over the last 3 years of thoughtfully looking at the proposals that come before you and doing it in a very professional and intelligent way. And I really have a great respect for that, and really appreciate how the people that are on this planning commission are serving this community so well and being so thoughtful in looking and critiquing every project that comes through.
Thank you, Director Free. Commissioner Lee.
Yes, just sort of following up with what Keith has said. I think several of us today probably heard Mayor Clary and his State of the City address to the Hendersonville Chamber. I think very accurately talk about the need for some Class A office space and a very large office sort of development. And we have Mr. Kirk, who is with us here tonight. Keith, as we look at to this work session in June and the zoning changes, if there is anything as a planning commission that we can do to encourage this sort of development or a partnership with other private entities, certainly I would be interested in, and I feel like many of our commissioners would be, in doing whatever we can do to encourage both the mayor, Mr. Kirk, and this sort of development in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, there's nothing else on the agenda. Mr. Millsaps is not here, so anyone make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ms. McCormick makes the motion, so do I have a second? Second. Second by Ms. Stringfellow. We are adjourned.